So this event is called Print and the Revolution, and originally we had another gentleman joining us, Josh Montcastle, but he is actually became well, he has strep throat. Let's not. I was going to say he was ill, but I don't want to start rumors. He has he has been diagnosed with strep throat. He's fine, but he can't talk. I believe he might actually be on watching. So, hi, Josh. We're all waving to you, and we will be fielding your questions, because honestly, you were representing millennials who print, and we actually have two millennials right here, so it works out perfectly. So the reason that this panel, like I said, is called Print and the Revolution. By the way, I did that for you, V, like Prince and the Revolution, Print and the Revolution, because you love Prince. He's your favorite.
I love Prince. He is my favorite.
So I actually named this panel for you. I'm not sure if I guess you didn't realize that, but so this session is about, we just on our keynote today, we talked about Black Lives Matters and creating first of all, getting your house in order, that there's an open culture, then what do you do to attract and maintain in a corporate environment, and then we heard from Kiana Barber, who is a woman who owns a Black-owned print shop in Chicago, and about how the industry can better support people who are essentially an incubator to bringing diversity into the printing industry. And this is the second part of that conversation in many ways, although there are intersections, of course. But in this conversation, we wanted to really bring it to attracting people to the industry through understanding that these are topics that matter to millennials and Gen Zers, and that we can do all the student outreach we want and support all the programs and do all the things that we've been doing forever. And yet every event I go to, how do we attract young people and diversity? How do we attract women? Like, what's the one thing that's not changing? Maybe it's all these old white guys we see everywhere, kind of keeping our culture in a certain bubble. I think that's fair to say. Also, the other thing is that this is not an educational session. This is a personal session. I have had conversations with Leiman and V, and everything we're going to talk about here, we pretty much know we're talking about in the manner that we're going to talk about it. So while in the other session, what I said is we will be respectful, but this is not a place for political correctness and making sure that there's, everybody's on the same page. There's grace, but we're not giving up ground. I also learned that in the last session, which I'm totally stealing. So to have this conversation, we have Vanecia Carr. She is the Director of Marketing for Paper at Domtar Paper. Vanecia, who's also known as V, she inspires and educates customers, influencers, and the next generation of paper and print professionals about the effectiveness and the enjoyment that paper and print can generate. And we also have Leiman Chan. He is the CEO of Nonstop Printing in Hollywood, California. Leiman helps creatives design fearlessly, love that, by allowing low minimums while also executing high quality print. By the way, in the land of value propositions, that's one of the better ones that I've heard. I mean, you've basically said, we want to help you work and we could do whatever you need to do. And I think that's great. So I want to start off by, again, just setting the framework a little and saying that, this is a hot button topic. And but it's an important topic, and how we can even start these conversations, comes into play as well. I did try to start some of these conversations on LinkedIn, and I realized myself that I made my own mistakes in the beginning. I came in hot, and it did not work because I was so passionate about it. And, you know, I always describe it as the Matrix, that I ate the red pill and I see the Matrix, and how can everyone else not see the Matrix? But it's not about me trying to convince people that there's systematic racism in the United States. If they choose not to believe that, they will end up with the lives that they end up with, and the partners that they end up with, and the customers that they end up with, and that is their path. But for everybody else out there, when I tried to have these conversations about, you know, how do we attract more diversity and support Black-owned printers in the communities that they serve, one of the first objections I received was that it was reverse discrimination, what I was doing, what I was suggesting, taking money out of the white print shop and diverting it to the Black print shop, or specifically looking for a person of color over the most qualified candidate that was right in front of me, or that the feeling was that it was a quota hire and not a merit hire. So I truly don't believe that these thoughts represent everybody, and I certainly don't believe that they represent the people who have joined us here today. But a lot of people, myself included, were not really sure what to do. And that's kind of really where I want to start. Now, Leiman, you happen to own your own print shop. So you're in a different position than other people. But let's have you tell your story and talk to the people about who want to change, but maybe don't know how.
Got it. So the first thing, can you guys hear me? Just want to make sure. Awesome. So I thought about it a lot. We had 2 conversations together, right, Deborah, right, V? Trying to discuss how we want to put this together. For me, I feel like it really goes into 2 sections. Before we go straight to the action plans, I think it is important to talk about the heart, not only for people that don't believe that diversity and inclusion are important, but people that do believe that it's important, right? Because I think it's a long road. So I'll start by telling you guys my story. And obviously feel free to cut me off. I'm going to try to make it as short as possible.
Oh, we have extra time because we have no Josh, so go ahead.
No, yeah, so I'll try to, I think it's important to talk about my story. The one word that I'd like everyone to remember is empathy, right? For all sides, for the old white guys, and also for Blacks, right? For Asians, for Indians, whoever. Empathy, I think, is the word that comes to mind for me the most. So yeah, I'm the CEO of Nonstop Printing. The way I introduce myself is, it was founded by my dad in 1993, and we really focus on print that makes you stop. When I turned 30, I had an identity crisis, because for me, I personally wrapped my self-worth into the financial success of the business. So if you start with your identity at that point, it's going to mean that you're going to make a lot of decisions that probably aren't the best in the long run. It got so bad to the point that we tried to exit the business. We literally wasted $40,000 trying to sell the business, right? That's how badly we all wanted to get out. It was obviously a disappointing endeavor. So it made me reflect on what the purpose of my life was, what the purpose of Nonstop is, right? So if I'm going to try to stick around and make this thing work, what are we going to need to do to be different? And I think it's all related to diversity and inclusion. In the midst of all this, you know, I'm also, I attempt to be a Christian, and I have a wife and 3 kids, right? So just all that as a backdrop, right? So let me talk about, yeah, my heart, right? So I grew up in LA, and I want to say that up front because in some ways it's going to be easier for me to be inclusive, because LA is the most, one of the most diverse environments ever, right? So I've always been diverse. I've had a lot of different friends growing up, so it was nothing new to me. It's something I personally cared about, but I couldn't really tell you why I cared so much, right? And that's where I really had to dig into our company values to find out what was important. Yeah, so by the time I was 30, right, we had, I've been working for Nonstop for 7 years for my dad, but I found myself really frustrated because I thought I was working hard, but again, the financial success of the business wasn't translating. And I felt really burnt out, right? And I think that's important to talk about now, especially in the times of COVID and BLM, the shootings that just happened yesterday, right? We're all burnt out. And that's why I think we need to rest and think about what our identity is and how we want to tackle this. And I think it's a heart matter first, right? So I realized I had to change my identity, right? So if money wasn't going to be my top priority, what would my life look like, right? I found when I was digging through my purpose and everything, I was the most energized when I was helping creative people hit their vision, right? So I do jobs for all sorts of fancy people, celebrities, fancy real estate, artists, and all that. And for each one of those, no matter what the subject matter was, I felt so much energy doing that. So I really searched the scriptures, and I really rested on this idea that I think I was put on this earth to help creatives, right? So what does that mean? You know, if you're gonna have that as your identity, what does that mean? So I started obsessing about creatives, and that helped me out a lot, right? I came up with the tagline for Nonstop, and I didn't put that on the intro because it's something I need to explain. We make print that makes you stop, right? What does that even mean, right? I love that it's jarring. I love that it makes you stop and like, what are you talking about? You're nonstop printing, right? The way that I was inspired by it was when I was obsessing and I wrote like a 5-page document about creatives so I could really understand creatives and empathize with creatives and understand their world. I myself am not creative at all, right? I am a printer. I'm a business guy. I got into Nonstop because I thought I was going to run Nonstop Printing like that. And my dad didn't know what he was doing. Dad, if you're watching, sorry. But yeah, I thought that it was going to be easy and I was going to run all these other businesses like Elon Musk, right? So that was me, right? I wanted to be the best business person ever. I did not care about print, right? But once I came on this journey, it was really important. Now, the thing is, with that article, it talks about, the title of it is, what is it? The title of it, it's written by Nicholas Cole, so definitely Google it. And it's the title of the blog article is called Dear Creative Marketers, You Have No Idea What Creativity Actually Means. And in parentheses, he says, I say this to help you, right? So he's really trying to get people's attention. But he talks about a bunch of different things, but the thing that got me really excited was the fact that creativity is something that makes you stop, right? Creativity is something that you look at, whether it's a piece of print, whether it's a mural on the wall, whether it's a 3D sculpture, it makes you stop and think about the world around you and reinterpret what the world is supposed to be, right? And that's how I came up with the idea of print that makes you stop. So what does this have to do with diversity and inclusion, right? Empathy. It has everything to do with empathy, right? As I've engaged with these conversations within myself and with creatives, and I have hour-long conversations with tons of people now because of this idea of empathy, right? With Deborah, right? How we got to know each other better, right? It was just because we talked about our different opinions.
Well, you actually jumped into this crazy LinkedIn conversation that I was having to kind of, again, we weren't there to educate. We were just there to present another point of view. And as a print business owner, you really helped with that because I can't speak for a print business owner, and you could. And you were speaking of, you know, the value of, you know, new ideas in the business, where I think that's where you're getting to. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Empathy has been huge, right? Because I've engaged with talks with creatives when it comes to creativity, it's opened up conversations I had never thought of. And I think for us, that's what our identity as a business is going to be around. If we're serving creatives, you inherently have to be inclusive because you're not going to get the best ideas, right? If I get all my ideas from my Chinese heritage, that's going to be good. And we've gotten to a certain point, right? But, and same thing for Americans, if we just stick with that concept of American ideas, it'll take you to a certain point. But if we take all the ideas of all of us in the entire world and come together to create new things and to create new ideas, I believe we're going to hit our full potential. So the question is, do you have to do that? No, right? But from a business perspective, from a career standpoint, I truly believe that empathy is going to take you to the next level, right? So how does that look like in our real world? Here's what I've actually, I don't know, should I go into that now? What I've actually done in this journey, or is that going to be for later?
Well, yeah, I mean, the discussion, besides obviously telling your story, of course, is, you know, how can you haven't really gotten into, though, the, you know, that you are in LA, so you do have access to a more diverse pool of candidates. However, you're still making decisions when everything is equal on who you want working with you and building the culture for your team. So for your business. So that's really where I kind of, you know, want to steer you back to a little, because you own your business and you are actively doing this. And, you know, I want to talk to the people out there who maybe aren't actively doing this, but want to understand why they should, or maybe you can help them understand why they should, besides the fact that they should have staff there who can mirror their customers, you know? Yeah.
So that's why I bring the topic of empathy. I think it's going to be really intimidating to do all these different things if there's a specific action plan. I think after the hype fades away from BLM and all this stuff, we're still going to have these problems, right? So what's the solution long term, right, in order to keep this movement going and to build a better world, right? And that's how I'll get into like what we actually do. So for example, if you look on our Instagram page, because I have been more empathetic, because I'm willing to get into the conversations with people and willing to get in uncomfortable conversations, I met Sheila Wiley from the YWCA. And their tagline is ending racism and empowering women, right? So they're a nonprofit agency. I think they're government funded, at least somewhat, and they're all around the United States. For us, we actually partnered with YWCA and their Digital Learning Academy to bring in basically half of our talent now comes from this program. And I bring that up because it's not like I went out and sought it, but that opportunity came to me because my mind was open, because I was willing to engage. And if you keep your mind open, you'll actually be able to see these things. And it even makes business sense, right? So for example, the YWCA program, when someone comes in, Sheila recruits people for me. I tell her what I would like, and that's where it comes in for me. I tell her diversity is extremely important for me, right? People of all colors, of all types. And I always tell Sheila that I'm looking for the diamond in the rough. That doesn't mean they're going to be the best at every single thing, right? But they're going to have something really unique about them, which brings that flavor into our company and brings that culture into our company. On top of that, from a business standpoint, this program gives us 300 hours for free, internship hours for free, so that we could bring people in without the risk of us spending money. I'm going to train them, and that's the return of it, right? We're acting as an internship. So we're going to bring people in, train you guys up, and no matter what, you're going to be in the YWCA ecosystem, and you'll get some training from Nonstop and be in our culture to see what our heart is, again, which is to serve creatives obsessively. Print that makes you stop. And that's been really huge for us, right? And again, it's not that I went to YWCA and talked about my mission and vision. This stuff came because I was willing to talk to people, right? So there's opportunities all around.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, but you put yourself in the right place, and you look for, and that's actually a great idea out there, to partner with organizations and, you know, just see if you can't have some sort of internship or apprenticeship or a barter for teaching, you know, a field trip, whatever it might be. Thank you so much, Leiman. I'm going to turn to V now. I'm going to call you V if that's okay, although her official name is Vanecia, but I'm still going to call you V because that's how I know you. Now, V, I'm obviously going to let you tell your story, or welcome you to tell your story, but just so I can set some groundwork, we did some math a few weeks ago, and you thought you were only one of 5 Black people in the paper industry, but we think I found one more gentleman who you didn't know. So we think we're up to 6 now. But you're also.
I will say, because I was thinking about this,
There's
there
more?
there are probably more that I don't know. So,
Okay.
and then there are people who are not in visible roles, like not in sales and marketing roles, who aren't as visible as like I am, or someone, Terrence from West Rock or something like that. So I just wanted to say there are probably a lot more, but they're not as visible as the marketing and the sales people that I'm aware of.
Okay. That is totally fair.
Yeah.
And also completely reflective of this conversation, though, because
Mhm.
it is who you can see that actually is where change comes from, or where somebody looking says, well, she can do it, I can do it. If he can do it, I can do it, along those nature. But there's bigger pictures here. So as Leiman is representing the business owner, V is representing someone who's part of a bigger corporation, who is a woman, is a minority. So can you share about your journey in the industry, which should be eye-opening for a lot of people, especially with your title and your job? And also, how do you build a diverse team within a corporation, and support and culture and systems that are fair to all? And fair comes up a lot now, as it not just share that's fair, but do all the systems protect everybody equally? V?
Sure. So I have been at my company for 15 years. I actually celebrated my 15-year anniversary in quarantine, which is pretty fun.
Happy anniversary, V.
Thanks.
So sorry.
I've done a number of roles at the company. I started in customer service, and I actually started because I knew someone that worked at the company. And when I graduated from college, she said, "Do you need a job?" And I said, "All right, fine." And so I sort of accidentally ended up in paper. And I don't know if print is this way. It seems like it is, but paper is, you come in and you never leave, and it just sort of stays that way. And maybe you go to another company within the industry, but usually people who come into paper don't leave. So I would say very early on, I had a very strong mentor, which I think was really critical. Being the young, sort of headstrong girl, I am not shy. I'm fairly aggressive, was more aggressive in my younger years, but I've mellowed out a little bit. But I had a really strong mentor, and he really sort of took me under his wing, which I think is something that has been more beneficial for my career than I think people give credit for. So, having that strong mentor in your corner, having someone who sees something in you, even if you don't see it in yourself. And a lot of times he pushed me into places I was like, there is no way I'm doing that. I don't know what's wrong with you. I can't do that, or whatever the case may be. I actually was promoted to director when I was 7 months pregnant with my first kid. And I was kind of like, what is wrong with you people? Like, I don't even know what you see. But I would say that from a standpoint of diversity, I have worked in that sort of print/merchant channel for a long time. And I have memories of going into a big formal event and people thinking that I'm there to hang their coat. And that, I was young. And well, I guess I still am young technically in this industry. I'm young, but I was young. I was a woman. I didn't look like everyone else. And it's interesting because I chuckle because there are people who I've met tons of times and they're like, "Oh, have we met?" And I literally want to say, like, I don't blend in with everyone. Like, you have to know that you've met me before. I'm, here's the brown girl with the curly hair that is the only one. Like, I just don't blend in. So anyway, I would say that Domtar has been super inclusive, and, is concerned about diversity and inclusion, but also equity, and making sure that when there is is someone who is qualified or is someone who is interested, making sure they have the tools and the resources. And I would say that's been the case for women. We don't have a ton of senior leaders from a women's perspective, but it's growing. And our president is Latino. Our vice president of supply chain is a Latina woman. My vice president is a woman. We have lots of people within our organization. It ranges, it runs the gamut, different religions, different backgrounds. And I would say, I've tried to create within my team. I have a team of about 15 people, and I've tried to create within my team. If you feel it or you say it, you're free to say it. We might not go that direction. It might not work, but I want you to feel like if you have an idea and maybe it's way different, that you have the opportunity in the space. And it doesn't matter if you're older, younger, Muslim, Christian, white, black, whatever. It doesn't matter. Your ideas are just that, your ideas, and everyone has sort of that safe space to open that up. And I would say that through our corporation, especially within sort of the sales and marketing function, which is where I've been my whole career, it has opened my eyes in a lot of ways. We don't have a whole lot of diversity within our sales organization. We don't have a lot of diversity among our customer base, especially in some of our, whether it's merchant partners or dealer partners, but we see a lot of diversity in the major retailer, big box stores, in graphic designers, even in commercial printing. It's really starting to be a bit more diverse than it was. So it's going to be more important than ever to be a supplier that is dedicated to having that broad range of skills, backgrounds, ideas to be able to serve a diverse and growing market in a number of ways.
I mean, it's just very, very poignant. In the previous keynote session with Kiana Barber from Chicago, she mentioned something really interesting that I think, puts a little exclamation point in the back of that, is that Black-owned businesses also want to do business with people who support Black-owned businesses, because that money goes back into the communities. Somebody who she used an example of a press. If she's going to buy a press from somebody and give somebody a commission, she wants that commission money back in the stores in neighborhoods that are more inclusive, and she wants to focus the money there instead of putting it in other places. And it's very important, looking at a whole ecosystem of how, if you have one message, is everybody you're involved with echoing that message? And can you expand it more? And what are they doing with their resources? And it becomes kind of like that barrel of monkeys, where you hook one and then you pick up another, and sometimes two jump on one, and whatever means necessary, everybody holds on and moves forward. So very interesting. I do want to turn this a bit to millennials, and not because they're these freaky things that nobody understands, but because first of all, I want to remind everybody that millennials are between 24 and 39 years old. These are not children to be referred to as, well, they just want to be on their phones. They are also managing $120 million print budgets. They are also running global organizations. They are also running corporate entities with teams owning print shops and everything else that you can imagine. So let's take that mystic millennial thing out of this, and let's talk about it as the fact that it is. There are 72 million millennials, the largest segment of the United States population. And by 2025, millennials will account for roughly 75% of the global workforce. That is 5 years. We have everyone has 5 years right now to get these people in your corporations and your companies before they're like, we're out of here. We don't want anything to do with this. Now, the current lack of inclusion and diversity is a reason for people we've spoken to they come into the printing industry with some idea, or maybe like V, it was someone said, there's an opportunity. Do you want to test it out? But as soon as they get there, they're like, oh my God, this is not for me. This is not, I don't feel comfortable. The word comfortable has come up a lot during these sessions. So how do we, really tackle all the isms that come into place when millennials kind of find themselves sitting in a print shop, which includes sexism, which includes ageism. By the way, both ends of that. Someone's like, why is the old guy coming to talk to me? And meanwhile, the old guy is the one with the most knowledge, the one you really want to be learning to, but they have an idea about that just as like young people. But how do we address this in the actual workplace? Leiman, we'll start with you. Leiman, microphone, you're muted.
Sorry. So the greatest potential, I feel, and again, I have to look at this as a leader with my role, but I think it does start at the top, right? It helps a lot when the person on top cares about these things, right? And I think it's difficult. It's going to be difficult for me to talk about from the ground up how to do it. I know that my team is talking to each other all the time about different issues and things like that. It's one thing that people really like about Nonstop, that we allow these conversations to happen. But I think as a company, as an industry, as people, we're going to reach our maximum potential if it starts from the people at the top, which is why I have a heart for, quote unquote, the old white guys, right?
Right.
I don't know if we're going to be able to reach them, but I think the only way to know is to actually talk about them, right? One thing that I was really guilty of earlier was I like to put people into buckets, right? He's this ism, this is
right.
this is everything that's going on, but my tone has completely changed where I want to talk to each individual person, and it takes a lot more time, it's a lot more work, it's a lot more uncomfortable. But I think that's where a lot of things can start. If you guys both have a heart and respect for each other, and I think we all want the world to be a better place.
Right.
I think it starts from there. It's just starting with those conversations, and the action plans will follow from that. You know?
So here's an example. I am now going to work for you, and I'm a woman of color. How do you communicate with me that I'm in a safe place, that there's a system for me there? How do I know before I take this job that I'm not going to all of a sudden be in there and then there's people telling literally off color jokes, or they have things hanging up at their desk, or there's any sort of isms going on that shouldn't? That's what I'm kind of saying. Like, how do you deal with that as a business owner?
It starts from the beginning. Who is doing your interview, right? I do the interviews, right? So immediately when I interview people, my first question is, what is your story, right? I'm genuinely interested in that story, and that sets the tone, right? In that same interview process, I talk about our values. And that's what I mean. It's hard to come up with quick things, right? Because every company is built differently. But I do feel like identity is important. What is your business about? Millennials are not going to join businesses these days that don't represent what they're feeling, right? Like for me, like when I was money motivated purely, Nonstop only got to a certain place. Now I'm in the beginning. I'm not sure where it's going to lead me now, but I'm way more excited about the business than I've ever been. And you could ask my parents, like they're like, well, you've matured in the last year. And it's because I actually have grown my heart for all these different kinds of people. So it starts with the hiring manager, right? After that, it's building your values around what you want to believe in. So I think that's really important. And then, of course, it's this idea of how do you live those values out? So again, it's much more macro to me, because it's not something you can like implement a couple things here and there, right? It's something that you're literally, the culture has to be about that, right? Your heart has to be there, or else long-term it won't work. Or if you swap that next manager in for a racist person, all of a sudden the system falls apart. So it starts from the top and goes down. If you're at the bottom, that's a harder conversation, right? I mean, at the end of the day, as a leader, that's what I feel guilty of all the time. What am I communicating down the chain that's hurting my own team? And I definitely make mistakes, right?
V?
I would say I'll speak more from a standpoint of once they're there, because I think you have to do your research on a company, because an interview is one touch point. And so, you have an interview, and if you interview with Leiman, you're going to think the company's great. Whether or not everyone that works for Leiman is great and that culture actually transitions to the press floor and all of that, those are things you can't really see until you work there. But I think I agree with that point of you can see a lot in the interviewing process, but people also show you what they want you to see in an interview on both sides, from a company perspective and a person perspective. But I would say once people are there, and these are some of, Josh's recommendations. So I'll make sure that we're sharing some of his perspective too. But that whole idea of a collaborative and innovative culture, but then really including people in the conversation. So I think it's important that you don't just have a culture where the people at the top are the ones who make the decisions and are expected to sort of hold everyone to the standard. It's upon every single person to hold themselves to a certain standard. And then I think it's critical. You see something, you say something. We have a saying at Domtar, it's more about safety than it is about anything else. But I think if we had a scenario, people would say it. Like, I have the courage to intervene when I see you walking through the parking lot while on the phone, or I see you, doing something in an unsafe manner. It's very similar. Like, you have to build the culture where people have the courage to intervene when they see something and they feel comfortable to say something. Because I will say, there have been people who have seen things and have stepped up, and it's been uncomfortable and they haven't wanted to do it, but it has made things better for other people. And we don't have I can think on, a hand or two, all the scenarios over the last 15 years where there's been either harassment or major issues, and they've been dealt with swiftly, where people feel like, okay, this kind of company isn't going to stand for something unacceptable in that nature. I would say that making sure they're part of the conversation, making sure that people have opportunities. And maybe that doesn't mean a job. Maybe that doesn't mean a promotion, but is it working on a special project? I was given an opportunity, and it's probably been 10 years ago now, where I worked on a special project with the senior vice president. It was a fishing expedition in my own mind. Like, he had me doing a bunch of random things that probably in my mind, I was like, why the heck am I doing that? But what he was doing is he was testing me out. He was giving me the opportunity to think about things differently, to try new things. And now that I look back on that, the skills I learned through that project are things that I took with me. But if he hadn't given me that opportunity or hadn't taken a leap of faith on me, so I would just say, and I said this in a thing when I was talking about being a younger person in this industry, take a chance on a young person. Like, if you've got somebody that you think is green and could never be successful, or, there's no way they'll ever be a VP, take a chance on them, mentor them, put a program together where people can share ideas. Because at a certain point, the people who have been in our industry for the last 30, 40 years are going to retire. There's going to be a giant knowledge gap across the entire industry when that baby boomer, when they start to retire, and it's going to happen. I mean, it is coming.
It's the for higher end of Gen X's that are in charge now, and they're on they could be retiring too. It's really these 39-year-olds. They're the next ones taking over. To your point, and I didn't mean to cut you off. Were you
okay? No, I was just going to say, you've got to connect those people together, because at a certain point, the high end is going to retire, and you've got a lot of young people that might not have that experience yet, but have the potential. And so you have to somehow meet them in the middle so that then they can really take over. Otherwise, you end up with lack of business continuity. You end up in a competitive disadvantage. Your competitor can come usurp you if you don't have that strategy clean. So I think that's just going to be critical. And the only way to do it is to bring up the millennials and, quite frankly, the Zs. I've got a Z on my team.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're going to have to start bringing them in. So I think it's critical.
It is critical. And this is kind of, the point that I've been trying to make with Elevate Print. This is the moment. This is the moment that we have to smooth the way and get rid of as much isms as we can, so the millennials can take over from where we have started. And I know you are millennials, so you are doing it. But when I'm a Gen Xer, so the people my age have to start making these changes so that people coming into the industry can see themselves in these leadership roles, to see, and the people who were given a chance or looked at differently, like, well, they don't have a college degree. Okay, well, everybody doesn't have a college degree. That does not mean that they cannot run a press, or aren't creative, or can't be a designer, or can't do a lot of things, that so that person might be more apt to give somebody else a chance when they are in a management position. And regardless of anything else, that just opens up the industry to new people. And that is, really what this is all about. The other thing, V, you mentioned, which I thought was really poignant, you used the word courage. And, it's very important with this topic, especially, my God, online, people are terrified to say anything, even though they feel a certain way. They're afraid. Am I going to alienate customers? Am I going to alienate this? I mean, the printing industry is not doing a great job, taking stands. Although I have to say, 5 industry organizations did, and I wrote a blog about it on my website. And everyone just go to Print Media Center and see who those organizations are. And that's who everybody should be, as far as I'm concerned. If you're going to be a member, that's where you want to go. If you want to participate in programs that are going to be developed to look in other ways that the industry can support communities that are not being supported, and provide new conduits into understanding all the opportunities in the printing industry, this is really the moment to make this happen. Because by the time, if we don't set this up for the millennials who will take over everything, we will never get the Gen Zers, and then that is the end of the printing industry, because that's where they are, the intolerance of intolerance generation. There is no black or white with them. It's there is right and wrong. I mean, there is only black and white with them, literally, in the white and I said white and wrong. That was a little Freudian slip. Right or wrong category. And if it's wrong and they feel uncomfortable, they will never come working into the industry. Now, taking that the next step, we mentioned social media before, and we see a lot of the brands out there taking big, steps in saying that there are things that they are going to stand for, and they're going to stand by what they're standing for in hopefully an authentic way. We saw last night in America, the sporting events shut down and said, no more. You don't want to do anything about this? Well, we're going to do something about this. Now, where do we fall on do print shops need to make statements and stands? Do industry corporations need to make stands? Now, V, I'm not asking you to speak for your corporation unless you want to, but I'm saying in general, as a woman, millennial, black woman, is it important to you to do business in that manner? So I'll actually start with you, V, if you don't mind.
So I will say, from a Domtar perspective, our CEO did put out a public statement back in May, and it was centered around diversity, what our values are within our company, how we're going to do business, what will and won't be tolerated within our company. And so there was a statement. And then there have been some internal things, some different discussions that groups have held to further the conversation. We have a diversity and inclusion task force within our company. And so just sort of driving those conversations forward so that it isn't a fad and it isn't a one-time thing. And, I once worked for Weyerhaeuser before Domtar purchased the paper division. And that was such a massive corporation that we had affinity groups for like every affinity, the Asian workers group, the Black women group, the Black male group, the Black group, the women's group. And And so I think, a lot of corporations, especially from a large scale, I think you see a lot more of that when corporations are large. I will say I was very pleased as a Black person in this industry to see the level of support that came through from various paper companies. And I'll even speak of some that I wouldn't normally speak of. But, the CEO of West Rock came out and made a very heartfelt message. The CEO of International Paper. Then you had Office Depot make a statement. You had Staples make a statement. I think you had people that you wouldn't normally expect. And I think this is sort of a turning point for our country, I think. And I think it probably had a lot to do with everyone being at home for COVID, because everyone is at home. Everyone is more on their phones than they were. People are online more. They're in front of a screen all the time. The little pop-up notification comes through. You click it, you watch a video, and here we go. So I think the opportunity for us to really enact change is now. And so I would say I've seen a lot more corporations making statements than I have ever seen before. And then, of course, there's always my favorite, Ben and Jerry's. They're the best marketers on the planet, and they are the strongest when it comes to their cause. And I'll just say one more thing about millennials. I think a lot of times people are like, millennials look for a cause. Millennials don't want to see that you have a tagline for a cause on your website. They want to see that it is ingrained in your culture and who you are as an organization, and that it's represented across all of your available touch points. So if I use Ben and Jerry's as the example, you know who Ben and Jerry's is, no matter how you see them, where you see them, from social media to their storefronts to how their employees do business. It is ingrained in their culture. And that's what millennials are going to gravitate toward, the companies that have a culture that's ingrained in the values that are in alignment with who they are and what they want for themselves.
Leiman, you said you work with a lot of creatives. You're in Hollywood. I mean, if we're going to talk about radical liberals, that's certainly where they are. How important is it that people who want to do business with you understand where you fall on these social issues from your perspective on attracting them?
Yeah, with this, I'll just say I'm very much a baby in doing things towards being more outspoken, right? Being more transparent. It's something that we didn't always have, and it's something that I'm passionate about. So very new in it. What I can share is, as I've been more vocal about a lot of these different issues, on our Instagram, you'll see me post things about the Wisconsin shooting. You'll see me post different artists that support the cause and create artwork around it. You have a post with me supporting Biden, so I'm very, very open with these things. So I don't know exactly where the business is going to go. It's going to be very exciting, and that's the risk. And my parents are worried as well. But I'm excited because in the midst of this, have I lost customers? I'm not so sure. It's a lot harder to get those metrics, but I can definitely tell you there's been customers that have definitely come to us because they're tired of working with the printers they used to, right? They're much more capable printers than us even. They have bigger machines and all that, but they really wanted to work with us because I have been outspoken, because I have shared my opinions on stuff. So I'm very new with it, but I've only been encouraged. Again, not that I do these things to get more business.
Right.
It's kind of like the cherry on top. And for me, my hope is that, again, serving creatives innately care about diversity. Creatives innately care about spreading new ideas, breaking the mold, breaking the status quo. So I know if I'm serving creatives, that's the direction I have to go, because that's who I'm serving, right? So I might lose some people, but I'm okay with that. Yeah.
To that point, when I, had my moment where I was just like, I've got a platform. I've used it for women in print. I've used it for print customers who I felt were being displaced, and I'm not using it for this thing now that has taken over my life as far as just really wanting to do something that matters, you know. And I had to have that moment with myself that I have a global audience that all does not agree about this at all. And in that, me pushing this button, post, could alienate 100,000 people. And am I going to push this button, post? And I, as strongly as I feel about this, I have a whole event about it. I had to think about it very carefully. And what I decided was that I'd rather move forward with 10,000 people who feel the same way as I do than 100,000 people who are destroying the world, as far as I'm concerned. So that is, where this event and everything came into place, as well as something that was really important when we had our preliminary conversation, was that we kind of didn't want to just leave it here. We wanted to at least come up with some sort of call to action that people could do moving forward. So I'll just share mine, and then we can move forward. So besides the fact that I have a platform to share my own opinions with my blogs and things of that nature, I do also have a podcast, and I'm using the podcast to find and seek out more voices to share stories in the industry, to highlight more businesses that have not been represented at all. Kiana Barber has been in industry over 20 years. The first time she ever spoke to anybody from the industry, if you could even call me somebody from the industry, was me. No one even knew she existed. And she has this amazing annual event called the Legacy Gala that has been supporting young Black entrepreneurs for the last 10 years. And nobody in the print industry is helping this woman. So that is something I can do. Something else I have done and will continue to do, and I'm asking for everybody's help out there. On my website, I now have a tab called Elevate Print. And in that tab, you can find a list of more business partners to work with, if you so choose. Everybody, make your own decisions about who your partners are. But if you're looking to expand your horizons, I'm keeping an ongoing list as they come into my radar, and I find businesses that fit this mold. Everybody out there, I'm looking for you to share your resources with me. So please get in touch. If you work with some great vendors or have some great suppliers, let me know. I want to add them to the list. Women-owned businesses as well, and people of color, minority-owned businesses, everybody who has been underserved, why can't I say represented today? Underrepresented, and hasn't been given a platform to share their story. So that is what I can do. Leiman, will end with V. Leiman?
Yeah, so a couple of things that we're doing is obviously continue to partner with YWCA. I'm really trying to get people into that ecosystem to help them and also give us talent and diversity. I partnered with my clients, right? Because I'm engaging more with my clients, new opportunities showed up. One is working with a photographer, a Black photographer named Stan Evans. He started another Instagram hashtag called the Social Studies Show. So we're going to make a zine with him that teaches people about the intersection between advertising and activism, because it's hard to learn how to be an activist, right? With another person, one of my former employees, she worked for a furniture company. Now she's working for a company called Devener. And they've been doing a lot of things to reach out to the community, and they reached out to me to ask for some free printing, just some posters, which is very easy for printers to do. And I'm like, sure, right? And they're so thankful, right? And it's not even taking me that much more effort, right? I'm just open to these opportunities, and they come because of the culture that we've built. I've talked to my teacher friends, and now we're going to try to do some free posters for students. So because they're at home, maybe they can get a Creative Cloud license for free, and then they could submit a poster online at our storefront and pay $1.50 for them, right? Something really cheap. Or for some teachers will give them a coupon code so the teachers can give their students free discount, free poster to print, right? Again, I think it's really important to have empathy and just to talk to people on both sides. Because I've found that as I've talked to people that I thought that I would hate, I think we all kind of want the same thing in the world. It's just how we're getting there is so different right now, and it's heartbreaking. But if we can just have those conversations, other opportunities will show up. But I'll just stop there.
Leiman, thank you so much. V? V.
Sorry. I'll share two that I think are really good from Josh's list. When it comes to millennials and the younger generation, consider a roundtable with young people within your company. Ask them what ways they feel they can help grow the business. And then getting involved in the schools in your city that are potentially overlooked. In most cities, there are Title I schools. There are schools that are not funded as well. So getting involved, maybe having an apprenticeship program, an internship program. We've had a couple of design students from the local, they do a graphic arts and they actually learn how to do design for print in the high school here. And so we bring them in for a semester. They come like an hour or two a week. And then I would say in most major cities, there is either a Black chamber. There are different organizations, in Charlotte, there's the Black MBA Association, there's the Black Charlotte Business Chamber, and it's really figuring out who's out there. Do a little research about your location, get involved with the local community, get involved with the industry associations that are beyond just the normal industry associations. You might have to venture into the local NAACP chapter, just to really start to make your company more well-known, to reach out to people that you might not otherwise find, and find people that might not otherwise think about the printing industry. If they didn't learn about it in school or don't have anyone in their family in the business, potentially they're not even thinking about print or paper. So just sort of tapping into those spots and finding a way to get your name out there, and then to find the potential candidate that could maybe change the trajectory of your business.
This has just been an amazing conversation, and I want to thank you both so much, and thank Josh. We did a lot of preparation for this. I'm really sorry you weren't feeling well, but thank you for bringing up his points, V. So at least he feels like he could add to this conversation. Appreciate that. So we're going to wrap up the Elevate Print Conference. Morton from Inkish popped on screen. He has been really dealing with way more than any human should have had to deal with on a webinar platform these last 3 days. But thank you guys so much for everything. Thank you everyone for attending. Really sorry about the issues. I mean, at last count, there were over 1,500 people who registered to see Elevate Print. We understand everybody didn't get in. However, all the replays are intact. Thank you all again.